Are you worried your children might repeat the same financial mistakes you made growing up? Hey, maybe you're still making them now. Do you lie awake at night concerned that your kids aren't learning the essential money management skills they'll need to succeed? Well, you're in luck, because today we'll explore how to teach your children biblical money principles that will set them up for lifelong financial success and spiritual growth. So stay tuned as we answer Ingrid's pressing question about raising financially responsible children in today's materialistic world. This is a show you don't want to miss.
In a world where crushing debt keeps you trapped, where living paycheck to paycheck has become your new normal, and where the dream of retirement seems impossibly out of reach, there's hope. Join financial evangelist Ralph E. Stepp Jr., a man who's walked through the fire of financial failure and emerged stronger on the other side. Welcome to Ask Ralph, the show where real-world experience meets biblical truth to break the bondage of financial despair. Get ready to take control of your money, break free from the financial stress, and align your resources with God's purpose for your life. This is Ask Ralph with Ralph E. Stepp Jr.
Hey there, I'm so glad you joined me today. You know, every time I sit down to record this show, I get this incredible surge of excitement. You might be saying, why is that? Well, here's why. Because I know that we're about to discuss something that could transform someone's financial future. It could transform your financial future. And today's topic is just that topic. Today I'm teaching on how to get your children to understand biblical money principles. And listen, this one's especially close to my heart because here's the truth. If you think about it, we're building more than just financial wisdom. We're creating a legacy that can impact generations. And trust me, you want to take notes on this one because what we're about to discuss could change how your family views money for generations to come. Now, speaking of helpful episodes, yesterday we tackled a really important topic that affects many homeowners. And that's this question. Do I have to pay taxes when I sell my home? You know, after I released that show, I received so many messages, and that's because it's something that causes a lot of anxiety for homeowners. So on that show, I broke down the primary residence exemption, how long you need to live in your home to qualify, what married couples need to know about their exemption amounts, and I also talked about common pitfalls to avoid when selling your home. So if you missed it, I want to encourage you, go back and listen, especially if you're thinking about selling your home in the next few years, or you know somebody that could benefit from that. I'm going to ask you to share that because here's the deal. The strategies I discussed could potentially save you thousands of dollars in taxes. Well, let me get right to today's listener question. It comes to us from Ingrid, and this is what Ingrid wrote. She said, "Dear Ralph, I just finished crying in my daughter's room after she went to sleep. Today at the store, my 8-year-old Madison had a complete meltdown because all of her friends have the latest iPhone, and she feels left out with her basic flip phone. What broke my heart wasn't the tantrum. It was realizing I'm failing to teach her what truly matters in life. See, I grew up in a home where money was never discussed, and it led me down a path of terrible financial decisions into my 20s. It took me 7 years to dig out of credit card debt, and I still carry shame about those choices. Now I'm watching my daughter show the same materialistic tendencies that got me into trouble, and I'm terrified she'll repeat my mistakes. As a single mom trying to raise my children in a Christian home, I feel completely overwhelmed by our culture's messages about money and success. Every time I turn around, there's another ad telling my kids they need more stuff to be happy. How can I teach my children biblical money principles in a way that will actually stick? I want them to understand that true wealth isn't about having the latest gadgets, but about being good stewards of what God has given us. Ralph, please help me break down this cycle of poor money management in my family. I don't want my children to learn these lessons the hard way like I did." And that's signed with hope and prayer, Ingrid. Well, Ingrid, first thing I'm going to say to you is thank you for your question. I can just picture you in your child's room and just filled with emotion and crying. I've been there. Trust me, I get it. And I think most parents would share this overall universal desire to protect our children from making the same mistakes that we've made. Listen, I've made the mistakes. Ingrid, clearly you've made the mistakes. And I've got children too. Mine are 23 and 27. And trust me, Ingrid, I've gone through the same thing that you've gone through. But let me just share something amazing with you right now, Ingrid. Something that a lot of people wouldn't think about. But your awareness about this is a strength. It's not a weakness. And I love the fact that you're seeking biblical guidance, because what that does is it shows spiritual maturity. You mentioned that you had gotten over that. It took 7 years to get past it. But what you're showing now is spiritual maturity, and you're recognizing patterns and you're trying to break them before they take hold. I had the same situation with my children, and I deal with this with many families. A lot of people that come in and meet with me, these are common struggles that people are having, Ingrid. You're not alone on that island. And think about it, what you're really getting at, Ingrid, is these financial decisions. You're right, they truly impact spiritual growth. And that's why I do this show, because it's all about the importance of aligning money management with our faith. And I love what you said. You emphasize stewardship over ownership. Like I said, I've been through this with my own kids. Listen, it was a challenge raising kids, and it's a challenge raising kids in today's materialistic culture. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But I've got some enthusiasm today because my goal is to help you get through this, because I've seen similar situations. And I've got some strategies today that will help you get to where you're going. And listen, they're not huge changes. They're small, consistent changes. And I'm going to give you some action steps today, not just theory. Because Ingrid, like I've said, you're not alone in this journey. A lot of people are suffering the same situation you're suffering. Now, if you've got a question just like Ingrid, one of the best ways that you can start your solution search is to go to askralph.com. I've done almost 700 episodes now. I've got blog posts. I've got videos. You can go right to askralph.com. You'll see a little search icon. One of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, if you've got a question, start your search there. And listen, if I haven't answered your question, then reach out to me by going to justaskralph.com and send in your question just like Ingrid did. So Ingrid, I always start the show with a Bible verse, and I thought about what would be the perfect Bible verse for today. Because what we're really talking about is teaching our children about money. Now, most of the time, secular people would focus on the practical aspects, budgeting, saving, spending wisely. But Ingrid, you're getting to something that's more foundational, and that's that spiritual foundation, because we need to establish that first. And this Bible verse comes to us from Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. And it's a common one. A lot of people will know this. And it says this, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well." Now you might be saying, "Ralph, why is that relevant to my situation?" Well, if you think about it, Ingrid, your struggle with your daughter, Madison, is exactly what this verse is talking about. Because you've already alluded to it. The first thing it addresses is the core issue of priorities. Your daughter, Madison, is fixated on having the latest iPhone. Why? Because her friends have one. And I'm sure if anybody else is listening, you hear the same thing that Ingrid's saying. And that is a clear example of how in our culture we put material desires before spiritual values. It has nothing to do with our first pursuit, which God is saying here should be God's kingdom. It shouldn't be our goal to keep up with the Joneses as kids. That sounded funny, but you understand what I'm saying. The second reason I love this verse for today's show is that it contains a beautiful promise. Notice how it says, "All these things will be given to you as well." See, the thing you need to understand, Ingrid, is this isn't suggesting that God's going to give us everything we want. It's not going to happen. But when we align our priorities with his kingdom, he ensures that our genuine needs are met. And that's the goal. And see, that is a powerful lesson to teach our children. And the third big thing, this verse provides a perfect foundation for teaching financial stewardship. And that's the thing I'm going to encourage you today, Ingrid, as I go through today's episode, is to prioritize seeking God's kingdom. And it naturally begins with viewing money differently. And that's something, you got to view money as something that not as something to you accumulate or spend frivolously, but as a resource to be stewarded wisely. So that's my goal today. Now, before I get into the actual content of today's show, I want to talk about my gratitude statement. You know what I'm grateful for today? I'm grateful for how this verse cuts through all the noise of our materialistic culture. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today. Because we live in a world that's constantly telling our children they need more stuff to be happy. They're telling us the same thing. And this scripture reminds us that true fulfillment comes from seeking God first. A lot of people would say, oh, that's a really nice saying, Ralph. But this verse isn't just a nice saying. It's a practical guide for reshaping how we think about and handle money. And it needs to be our goal, and it needs to be our focus. And Ingrid, that's exactly what you need as you work to teach your daughter about biblical money management. Our popular culture has this belief that wealth equals happiness. Madison's saying that. You know, the iPhone situation is a symptom of a deeper issue. So as I planned for this episode, I wanted to really think about, what are we really talking about? We're talking about youth and materialism. And this is something that's on the rise. It's an increasing trend. And the thing we need to understand is it is having a huge influence when our children are in their developmental stages, that adolescence, that young adulthood. So you might ask the logical question, what are the consequences of this? And it's having a negative impact on our well-being. It's having an impact on our happiness, life satisfaction, and self-esteem. Because we're always being pushed to strive for something else. And at some point, those things are not even attainable. It's reducing our pro-social behavior. It's making us go into debt. And here's something I didn't think about, but a lot of statistics show, and I'll talk about this in my blog post, which I'll talk a little bit later, there's actually a correlation with lower academic performance in our children. You might say, Ralph, well, what's causing this? I'm going to tell you what my personal opinion is. It's this huge media influence with its advertising, portrayals, influencers, affluence, whatever you want to call it. That's the first part of it. Like you said, Ingrid, people are getting bombarded from all directions with this belief that you need more to be happy. And unfortunately, it's also our parenting skills. We're not doing a great job as parents. I want to call myself out. We're too focused on rewards, and we have this emphasis on possessions. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today. Of course, there's peer pressure, like your daughter Madison said. Everybody's got this, Mom. I want to have it too. And there's also this whole situation with economic insecurity, and that's all leading to this materialism. So I thought I'd share a funny story about what I see is how this plays along. So let me just paint a picture here. Like I said, my kids are 23 and 27, but I remember when my kids were younger. In fact, I remember this one particular situation. My oldest son, Ryan, had gotten some kind of illness. I don't remember, it was like a flu or something like that. Well, he ended up being in the hospital. And my wife was staying there at the hospital. And in Delaware, we've got a great children's hospital, the A.I. DuPont Hospital for Children. And if you ever need that for your children, we have a great one here in Delaware. But anyway, let me get back to the story. So my wife and my son and I were at this hospital. And during that time, I asked my mom to watch my younger son at the time. And I want to say he was about 3 years old at this point. So my mom had taken him for a couple nights so we could get, things situated with our older son. And I remember my wife was staying there at the hospital with him, and I was coming home at night. And I remember I got home one night, it was about 10 o'clock at night. And I just put my head down on the pillow and my cell phone goes off. And I'm thinking, well, this can't be good. So I look down, I see it's my mother's phone number. My mother's popping up on my phone screen here. And I answered the phone. I said, hey, Mom, what's going on? Is everything all right? Because at 10 o'clock, I'm figuring there must be a problem. And she goes, no, everything's fine. But listen, I can't get your son to leave the Kmart. Now, Kmart is a department store. I think they've all closed down now. Picture this. Kmart's a department store. And my mom says, listen, I can't get your son to leave Kmart. I said, Mom, it's 10 o'clock at night. Why is he still at Kmart? Well, Ralph, listen. On the way out of the store, he saw one of these claw machines. You know these machines where you put a couple bucks in and you have this little crane thing and you drop it in to grab a toy out of it? And I didn't tell my mother this at the time, but I knew my son had an issue with these claw machines. It was no joke. So she says to me, she says, Ralph, he keeps on playing this claw machine. And I said to her, Mom, I said, how's he getting the money to play it? Well, I felt bad for him. He really wanted that stuffed animal in there. So I've been giving him $1 and giving him $1. He just won't leave it. Now he's throwing a tantrum here in the entranceway of the Kmart. She said, I think the store manager is actually trying to close the store, but your son won't leave. And I said to my mom, I said, listen, I am exhausted. I've been dealing with my other son being sick all day. I said, here's what you need to do. Stop enabling him. Grab him by his arm, stop giving him money to put in the claw machine, and get out of the store. It's really that simple. But my mom was in that position where she was trying to give him something. He had that desire. He saw those stuffed animals in that claw machine. And I think about the emotional impact both on my mom and on my son. And Ingrid, you had the exact same situation. Here, your daughter's throwing a fit because she wanted that newest iPhone. So we have to figure out how to move beyond that. And one of the things that you mentioned, Ingrid, and I think this was so pointed, is that we've got to figure out ways to break down generational money habits. You were very honest about that, Ingrid. You said, Ralph, listen, I went through these bad decisions. Hey, Ingrid, I did the same thing. But you realize that you don't want your child to make those same decisions, those same mistakes. And listen, as a Christian, there is so much cultural pressure on us as Christian parents. We're being attacked by, why would you raise your kids that way? Why do you want to teach your kids about faith? Why do you want to teach your kids about tithing or giving or sharing or stewardship? We have so much pressure on us about that. And then we've got this constant pressure of trying to balance wants versus needs. And I call it the gimme more generation. Picture my son. He's standing at the claw machine. He's 3 or 4 years old. But he was so encapsulated by that idea of that call dropping down and grabbing that stuffed animal, and he would win. And the thing is, he's 23 years old. We go out to dinner on Sunday nights, and there's a claw machine on the way out of the restaurant, and he drops at least $5 or $10 in that every week. Listen, I'm an adult. He makes his own money. Spend your money how you want. But think about that. How much pressure there is on that. And I think about the emotional toll that you're having, Ingrid. And I had it with my kids. There's an emotional toll on parent-child relationships. There was an emotional toll for my mom that night. She was the doting grandmother. She wanted to do everything for him. She knew that we were going through a tough time with our oldest son, and she was just trying to make him happy. But was she getting anywhere? I would argue no. So I think I've painted a pretty dark picture, and I don't mean to be negative. Because here's the thing, Ingrid, I've got steps to help you succeed. I got steps for helping you break this cycle. So Ingrid, you can do this. So how do we get there? I'm going to start by talking about what I consider the main 4 components of our money management categories. And here's what you need to teach your kids from the very beginning. And I'm going to get into some specifics here in a few minutes. But if you can establish 4 main things: earning, saving, spending, and giving. A lot of times people say to me, well, I do this on my toddlers. We set up jars of earning, saving, spending, and giving, however you want to do it. But I really believe that if you can set the table with those 4 things and then teach your children to allocate things in that. What do they earn? What do they save? What do they spend? And what do they give? And then you have to review those things. But let's talk about some specifics. And one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, number 1 thing, start early. You got to start introducing these basic money concepts during early childhood. You think back when you were a kid, and I didn't think about it until I was doing this show, but think about the idea of a piggy bank. I mean, that's a tangible tool that I don't know about you, but I remember having one when I was maybe, look, how far back can you really remember? But I remember having one because it was this plastic, and I would shake it. All these coins were in there, and I don't know, maybe we went to the store or something. I saw something I wanted, and, I had that flip out on my mom in the store, and she says, no, let's go. You're not getting it. Get back to the house, and I've got this plastic piggy bank sitting on the shelf in my bedroom. and it's plastic, I'm thinking, you know what? I can get into this. All I got to do is get a pair of scissors and cut right into it. So you can use that tangible tool when your kids are very young. Start with a piggy bank. Maybe you do a simple allowance system. Connect chores with earnings opportunities, because then you're reinforcing two things. You're enforcing that earning and you're enforcing that saving and spending, because then you can really teach allocation. And then you can let your kids learn through practical experience. Because let me just tell you, I talked about this on the show before, and it was about an iPhone, exactly, Ingrid. And this other client that I dealt with, she had the same situation with her daughter. And she said to her daughter, here's what I'm going to do for you. I will match every dollar you save for that new iPhone. And they did that, and the daughter saved, I don't remember, $300 or $400 so she could go buy that iPhone. And it was funny, when she got to the store, and my client relayed this to me afterwards, she said, Ralph, my daughter ended up not buying the latest and greatest iPhone because it cost too much. She bought the lower and the cheaper one because it was her money. And here's the thing you got to understand. Even when you start early, Ingrid, here's the thing you got to definitely understand. Your children are going to make mistakes. Ingrid, you made mistakes. I made mistakes. We all make mistakes. But you can use these mistakes as teaching moments to help get your kids to really understand the biblical concepts of finance. So that's the first thing, start early. Second thing, you got to be a role model. I talked about this in a show the other day. You've got to demonstrate the principles you're teaching. If you're not doing it, how in the world do you think your kids are going to do it? Talk to them about budgeting. Now, I'm not saying to become a situation where you burden them. I shared this with the other day. My mother burdened me as a young guy. She burdened me with stuff I shouldn't have had to worry about. I'm not by any stretch telling you to burden your kids with stuff, but what you can do is you can demonstrate active budgeting practices. You can talk about financial decisions. Be careful about how you do that, but you can share some things with them. Maybe it's about a family vacation and you want to decide how much we going to spend on a vacation. You can have a family discussion about it. Well, if we do this, we can only do this many days. If we do this, we can do this many days. If we do a staycation, we can do this, this, and this. And then I'm going to encourage you at the same time, discuss the successes and the setbacks. Share with your kids the mistakes you've made. That's okay. But show them the process of making better financial choices. And again, like I said, you have to do this safely, but model responsible spending habits. Listen, if you think your kids aren't learning from what they see, you're lying to yourself. They see what is going on. If you every night are ordering DoorDash or you're hitting the Starbucks, and I'm not picking on either of those, they are fine companies and fine businesses to use. But what are you showing your children? And I know that hurts, Ingrid, to talk about that, but what are you showing your children? What are we showing our children? Now, one of the ways you can do that is by using interactive learning models, money-focused games, educational apps. Encourage them to read books about financial concepts, share those with them. Nighttime reading doesn't have to be all about, space goblins and all whatever we're teaching our kids these days. You can talk about finances. I remember as a young kid, I thought it was the coolest thing. My mom and dad gave me coins to play with. And I think about it now. My dad's an accountant as well. I thought about it now. Well, actually, what they were doing was they were teaching me financial concepts even that far back. Well, this is a quarter. This is a dime. And I feel like in our culture, we don't do this anymore. We give that cell phone or iPad to the kids. But find learning models that are engaging and enjoyable. Another thing you can do, and I'm not going to talk a lot about it, is introduce them to banking. Set up that savings account. Set up their ability to understand what that looks like, that bank account. I remember my mom taking me to the bank when I was a young guy and setting up what we called a passbook savings account, and I could watch that money grow. Another thing, like I said a few minutes ago, include them in the financial decision making. But be careful, set collaborative saving goals. Maybe you say as a family, listen, this year we're going to save X number of dollars so we can do this. Maybe you talk about charitable giving options. You can plan family purchases together. Maybe you're talking about buying a new TV. Now, maybe that's not a good example, but let's just use that as an example. Or like I said, consider that vacation budgeting. And here's another thing a lot of people don't think about is share household expenses with your children. Now, not toddlers, But as your kids get older, help them to realize what things cost. Because the thing you don't want to have is that 22-year-old or 23-year-old that goes out on their own and they have no concept of what the electric bill looks like or what the water bill looks like or how much a cell phone bill is. Again, I'm not saying to burden them, but share those expenses. Help them to understand. Help them to look at the basic components of a budget. There's a great amount of visual learning tools. Create savings goal charts. Track those progresses visually. One of the things that I thought was really cool, I had a client tell me they were doing a family plan to save for a vacation. They got a big piece of poster board and they put at the top of that, we needed, let's just say $10,000. And they started at zero. And every week they would have sort of a family celebration and they would color in that as they reached to that top level. And you got to celebrate those things because kids will start to see the value of saving. They'll start to see that the value of moving beyond wants and getting to needs. Another thing you've got to do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but educate them about debt, explain interest, and demonstrate the long-term impacts of that. Use real-world examples. Talk about your mortgage, for example. You can sit there with a teenager and say, hey, mom and dad got a mortgage. Let me tell you how that works. Because you'd be surprised how many kids and young adults have no concept of that. Discuss credit responsibly with them. Show how compound interest works. And really promote them watching out for the danger of debt. Maybe you let them borrow some money and you charge them interest to pay it back. And last but not least, here's one of the things I really want you to enforce. It's one of those main things in the 4 things I talked about. We started off with earning, saving. We talked about spending and making better decisions. Well, it all culminates with giving. Because that's the whole point of this whole thing. Give them opportunities to give. Maybe you connect them with causes they find to be valuable. Maybe you do volunteer projects together. Find things that you guys can do together to give back, that support the community. And then track that giving impact. Share some stories about things that you did maybe when you were younger. And then look at your community and find needs in the community. And this is a great way to teach your children biblical financial principles. And like I said, mentioned this a few minutes ago, every time I do a show, which is daily, I also write a daily blog post, and it goes a little deeper than what I talk about on the show. I give you some more details. I talk about some citations of where I got information for the show. And so I'm going to encourage you to check that out. You can go to askralphpodcast.com/blog. Again, that's askralphpodcast.com/blog if you want to go a little deeper. Now, before we wrap up today's show, I want to speak directly to you, especially if Ingrid's story struck a chord in your heart. I think we all can understand the feeling that she described. Maybe you're doing this right now. You're standing in your child's room. You're overwhelmed by the weight of wanting to teach better money habits, and maybe you've not done it well yourself. And listen, I've been there both personally and I've dealt with countless families I've helped. And here's what I want you to know. You don't have to navigate this journey alone. I had years in various sectors of the financial industry, and my deep commitment to Christian principles, I've developed a unique approach that helps families like yours find their way to financial peace. So I'm going to encourage you. Book a consultation with me. Go to askralph.com. Click on the button that says book a call with Ralph. And here's what you're going to receive. First, we're going to have a one-on-one conversation where I'm going to listen to your specific situation. Because here's the truth. Every family's journey is unique. And I want to understand your particular challenges and goals because everybody is different. There's no cookie cutter approach here. And then once I do that, once I accumulate that information, I'm going to help you develop a personalized plan that will combine those sound financial principles with biblical teaching. Now, that's something you're not going to find with traditional financial advisors. They just don't do that. And listen, this isn't just about budgets and spreadsheets. I'm going to move well beyond that. It's about creating a legacy of financial wisdom for your children while at the same time honoring God. And the third thing, you're going to receive practical, actionable steps that work in today's world while staying true to your faith. I'm going to show you how to make those small changes that can lead to significant improvements in both your financial situation and your spiritual life. See, here's the thing you need to understand. I've walked this path myself, and I've guided numerous families to financial freedom while strengthening their faith. So whether you're struggling with debt, trying to teach your children about money, or simply looking to align your finances with your faith, I'm here to help you. Don't wait until financial stress affects your family relationships and peace of mind, because it will. Head over to AskRalph.com right now and book your personal consultation. And together, we'll create a plan that not only addresses your immediate concerns, but sets your family up for long-term success. Because remember this, my passion, my genuine calling is to help you achieve financial success. I want to see you live out your dreams and grow in your faith. So let's take this journey together. Again, visit AskRalph.com today, because listen, your family's financial future is worth this important step, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. Well, let's talk about some reflection questions, because we've covered a ton today. But I want you to really think for a few moments, what's going on in your life? So I'm going to start with the first one. Number one, what financial habits are you currently modeling for your children? We talked about that in modeling. What are you showing your kids right now? Is it time to make a change? Is it time to embrace the things I've talked about today? Because remember, they are going to be like sponges, especially when they're in their young and formative years. So what are you modeling for them? Second reflection question today. What can you do to begin incorporating biblical money principles in your daily family discussions? You have to be intentional about this. It's not going to happen just on its own. Pray about it, but be intentional about incorporating biblical money principles in your daily family discussions. And the third thing, I'm going to challenge you to do this. What specific steps will you take this week? Do them this week to start teaching your children about financial stewardship. Because listen, I say this on the show all the time. You may have the best intentions. You might have thought about, oh, Ralph, those are great things. Oh yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to open bank accounts. We're going to talk about financial stewardship. We're going to talk about saving. We're going to talk about spending. We're going to talk about, needs versus wants. But if you don't put that into action, you're never going to see results from that. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to have that child that's going to make the same financial mistakes that you've made, and maybe even worse. Now, don't forget to join me tomorrow when I'll be discussing 1099 forms. Got a question from a client the other day, and I thought this is a great topic for the show. We're going to talk about what they are, who needs to prepare them, and how to handle them if you receive one. A lot of people don't understand what that's all about. Well, tomorrow's show is going to be all about that. So as I close, remember this. My passion is to help you achieve financial success. I want to see you live out your dreams. I want to see you grow in your faith. And today I want to see you build that for the next generation. Our kids need that. They're counting on us to give them the tools to be successful in a world that is trying to tear them apart, both financially and spiritually. So invest in your kids, but invest wisely. Be intentional about it. And as I close, together we can master your finances if we work together from a Christian perspective. So as I always say, stay financially savvy, model that for your kids, and may God bless you abundantly.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph Show. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media, Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.